to another podcast episode of For the World. So, even though this is after January, which is our Gender Equality Month, we'll still be doing one more podcast episode about feminism. And today, this is going to be discussing feminism, like through portrayed in movies and books, and kind of the real world in general. And we'll just be like relating it to ideas and our opinions on feminism. So, to start off, well, everybody here today, we have Grace, Sabvi, and Sia, and me. And so Grace will be starting off talking about, Taylor Swift. Whoa, we love Taylor Swift. Okay, Grace.
So the Super Bowl is coming up and the Chiefs are playing, and the sales tickets have gone up because, Travis Kelce is dating Taylor Swift. And we just wanted to talk about how Taylor Swift has had an impact on the media recently and as well as just with her entire career. So she's always like since Lover came out in 2019, she's always been like a big part of feminism. That's been her whole movement, but she's had problems with it and she's also helped it in many ways. With one of her songs, The Man, she's been viewed as like saying that feminism isn't a specific thing, but that if she was a man, the way she acts and the way she decides to portray herself in media would be a lot differently received, because currently she was perceived as this sort of slut who would date men and then forget about them. But that song is specifically about how that's not the case.
Mm, okay. Okay, honestly, I don't know that much about Taylor Swift, but I know she's definitely influential on almost everything she does influences a lot of people. I know lots of her followers are like girls and teens or like 20 girls and 20, I don't know, but like younger women. So what do you think I don't know, for you or for any girl your age, like what do you think is most influential about Taylor Swift?
I think in the general society, she's most influential within the economy because everywhere she goes, she boosts the economy. But I think in terms of gender norms, she's probably one of the first to ever become a self-made billionaire exclusively through music and not through like a makeup company or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, and like kind of going back to like the undertones that you said earlier of like how she like stood up for herself against like, accusations of being called a slut and whatever, like all of that is like I think there's also like other really healthy ways that it's being portrayed in the media to like normalize like helping people who are like seen like that, or like showing how like women shouldn't be like slut shamed for like no reason. Like in the book Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo, one of the girls, she had to work, or she was like kind of put into like forced slavery, and she was made to like work at a menagerie. um and like when she got a job like outside of that, it just showed how like she was like strong enough to like overcome that, and how like no one at her job really cared about that as long as like she could do her job properly, which was like being a spy, because it's like a fantasy book. But I think it was like just really important in like the messaging of like, as long as you're good at what you do, at what you do, it shouldn't matter like where you come from. It's just like who you are in the present. That's what really matters. And like I think that a big problem in our society that like shows up is that people tend to like categorize women based on what they do and do not do, which is like a really big issue that's been trying like that people have been trying to fix more like now than ever.
Just adding on to that, I had a couple questions. So, like, first of all, like, what would you say is independence? Because I think this sort of idea that these women should be classified by what they do is kind of just showing that they're independent from rather these roles that define them. So, how would you say the concept of independent like feeds into feminism?
I think that like independence is something that you should define on your own terms. Like you don't have to be independent in the way that others say that you have to be independent. Like as another thing, like you can want to like be like a damsel in distress, or like you can want to like be like dependent on someone else. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just you should be able to like be self-reliant too. Like in this other book that I read, The Lunar Chronicles, which I know were really popular and people in like sixth or seventh grade a few years ago. Um, it talked a lot about how like there was this one character who's based on Rapunzel who just she really wanted to like be rescued by a prince and she really wanted to like have that sense of like being a damsel in distress, but she learned that like she couldn't always rely on him and she had to like learn how to make her own way in the world. Like she had to like learn how to like be really independent and like by independent that just meant self-reliant for her. Like she shouldn't have to like be completely reliant on some guy. Like she should be able to rely on herself as well. And I think that's like a major part of independence, like just being able to be self-reliant in the world and having like practical life skills.
Wait, also to add on to that, I know I was reading about this somewhere, but in like the Hunger Games, like Katniss, the main character, like throughout the whole thing, apparently she was like manipulated into making decisions that maybe she didn't know much about or even like she didn't want to do it. But apparently, like at the end, her final decision that she made herself, like going back to Sadia's point about self-reliance, was to like kill the president. So if I'm being honest, like independence, it's okay to rely on others, or maybe not rely on them, but like share a bond with others and maybe sometimes rely on them, but also it's important to make decisions yourself and just have a comprehension of like the consequences of the decision and what you are going to do because I think that shows more independence than like being by yourself or something. Okay. Okay, I'm kind of like going back now, but okay, going back like really far, but Grace mentioned that like Taylor Swift was like the first um like self-made billionaire about in the music industry. Is that what you said, Grace? Something like that?
Yeah, like the first female one who doesn't have like a side company.
Yeah. Okay. I also saw I was on Instagram. I was like scrolling through it and I saw like Leve posted something saying that I forgot the exact number, but I know it's less than 10%. Like less than 10% of the top music is produced by female artists. And I thought that was kind of crazy because there are like so many popular female like singers and musicians, but to see that not much music is produced by females is kind of interesting, and I wonder like how that might affect the industry or something like that.
Oh yeah, it's she's I think in the post it says 2.8%.
Yeah, it was like a super small percent. I was like really shocked.
I think like the number one producers right now is Jack Antonoff and Daniel Negro because um Jack Antonoff is the Taylor Swift producer, so obviously he's extremely big. But then the other guy he produces for Olivia Rodrigo, who's probably just as big as Taylor Swift right now, I would say.
I think like in relation to I think it's like again about like the way that people are like that women are like kind of perceived in those roles. Because like a lot of the times in society, women are kind of like put into those boxes of like what people think they should and shouldn't do and like balancing their lives, which I thought was also like a really important scene in like the Barbie movie, for instance, when like America Ferrera had that like really iconic like scene where she talked about all like the do's and don'ts and like struggles of being a woman that like made it so popular. Where people were like, yeah, that's exactly what it's like because it's like if you, for example, like eat a full meal, then people think, why are you eating so much? But then when you don't eat enough, it's like, why aren't you eating enough? And it was just like she gave so many examples of like what people say that women shouldn't do in society. And I feel like that's always like a really big limiting factor for like women in like those big industries because like they're the most like popularized like public figures who are like constantly being harped on by like people who don't really know their situation or like who pass judgment without like being like without they shouldn't be able to pass judgment like the way they do.
Another connection to that is, well, technically not a woman really living in the business industry, but Mulan, a lot of people's one of their childhood favorites, the Disney princess. But she was really something that was an inspiration to a lot of people. And I know a lot of people appreciate Mulan just because of her desire to kind of go out and like defy all the norms that had been set out for her of, oh, you have to do this, you have to be this housewife, you have to do all these chores at home. But she was able to defy that, and she ended up getting the position that she wanted, that was completely against what others had been expecting out of her. And the struggle to get there was a big one, but she still just kept believing in herself and persevering. And I think that's a really important message for any people, especially young girls who look up to a lot of these people for inspiration. The big thing is to just keep trying despite what others say. And if you're determined, like, you will find a way to achieve that goal. And I think Milan really encompasses that really well.
Yeah, I think it's a like you mentioned that like a lot of girls look up to like Disney movie characters or like any childhood character they watch. So it is really important that Disney or any other children's show sets up like a good standard for kids. And like especially for women, I think now so many shows are becoming more inclusive for women. And I was researching like some sitcoms, some popular stuff people watch, and I came across like Seinfeld, and the only like woman main character is Elaine. And like although she's the only woman main character, she kind of showed that she was really powerful, but not only that, not only like towards the feminine perspective, but she also like sets a good example for people watching her to show that even though she's like the only woman, like I don't know, in the friend group, she's still like herself, and she's not letting any of the other people like influence her, which is like a good role model for people watching the show.
Yeah, I think like right now the biggest Disney show coming out is Percy Jackson. And I think like they portrayed Annabeth really, really well because Annabeth, they stayed true to how she isn't just the side character or the girl of the group, but that she's still the brains behind everything. And even in the books, after she becomes Percy's girlfriend, she's not just Percy's girlfriend, she's still like the smart one, keeping everyone else not from dying.
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the best parts about Annabeth was the fact that like even though she was like the hardcore one, like you could see even in the like it happened faster in the show, but even in like the books, like even though she like came off as like this really hardcore person who like didn't really let any obstacles stand in their way, like she when like Percy was in danger, like when any of her like really close friends were like in danger, she like became really emotional and like I think it's important to like recognize that you can have like that balance between one and the other. Like it doesn't have to be like completely just like, oh, women are like completely emotional or like women are completely like hard and cold and like cut off. Like you can have a good mixture of like having emotions but also being like really open to um or like having emotions but then also putting up like this front of um like knowing your self-worth and like being self-confident.
Yeah, I love that. I think some people like portray feminism as, oh, women are like stronger, like feminism is women being strong, but I think it just comes down to like maybe just equality, like or like a balance between like being human, right? Like having those emotions, but also being strong, being an individual, but then at the same time like relying on someone. I guess that goes back to what we were talking about before about like individualism and self-reliance. But yeah, feminism is it's kind of just like being yourself. I don't know, that's kind of like very typical, but it doesn't have to be just like this strong woman like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that feminism is kind of like it's you put it really well. Like you just define your own terms sort of. Like You don't have to be like the completely strong one. Like I remember watching this one movie, it's kind of old now, but it's called She's the Man, and it's about this girl who really wants to play soccer, but at her current school, like the guys team needed more practice and there wasn't enough like signups for the girls team. So she asked them if she could play on the guys team instead because she said she was getting really good. But they didn't let her. So she like transferred to another school, and then she joined, like she pretended to be a boy and joined their boys team to get back at like her school. And but like throughout the whole thing, like she was still like pining after a boy, and like she still like wanted to be a girl. She just had to pretend to be a boy to like get on the team and like prove that she was like able to. And I thought that was like, again, like a really powerful thing of saying like she defined her terms of like she, like soccer was her passion and like she really wanted to do it, but at the same time she wanted to like be kind of a stereotypical like girl who fussed over like a boy and like who cared about that stuff. Like she didn't want to like necessarily fit like one extreme or the other of being like a complete tomboy or like being a complete like girly girl.
I think another movie that's really similar to that one is probably like, I think it's called 10 Things I Hate About You, where at the beginning she starts out like the exact opposite, where she's like, I hate everyone and every guy who goes here is ugly. But towards the end, she's more, she tries to put less like barriers up, and she tries to define herself a lot less from being what everyone else doesn't want her to be. So I think for her, that's realizing that she can be whoever she wants to be, whether or not it breaks society's rules.
I think the change of like the times has really been encompassed through the idea of feminism through the ages. So it's kind of like in the beginning, everyone like, if you think about it, like years ago, like the way that they thought someone was feminist is when they broke the norms. But now people are really realizing that it's not necessarily about breaking these norms, considering that a lot of the norms have become more lenient and more accepting. It's really just about being who you are without fear of judgment. And I think that's something that's more powerful than just saying, I'm going to break all these norms. Just like we mentioned in the past couple of characters, like these people aren't just all about, I'm going to do what people don't want me to do, but I'm doing what I want to do. And I think that's something that's like a universal message that'll always stand regardless, because at the end of the day, society will always be changing and the norms will be changing, but whatever you want to do is really what should be able to define you.
Oh my God, I love that. Like, do what you want to do. That's so good. I think like yeah, you kind of like brush over this here. Like that definitely applies to everyone. I know this episode is kind of focused towards feminism, but like everything we're talking about can apply to like men as well, or like just people in general. Like do what you want to do. And oh my God, going back, be yourself. Stuff like that. And we're talking about all these shows and portrayals of feminism through shows. And I think like society definitely recognizes like women's right, feminism, and there are definitely examples of like being strong by being yourself. So I think it's good that like people's personalities are being recognized like through society and in what people like view like TV shows and books.
Another like quick example I kind of want to go over once again is back to the Disney princesses. And I know that's something that everyone's like, okay, stereotypical feminist because it's all about princesses, it's all about the girls. But kind of looking through that and seeing like, okay, where did it start off from? Like Snow White, Cinderella, Aurora, the Sleeping Beauty, same thing. But like all of these were in a way feminist, but they're so different from the ones we see now, like Elsa and Moana and many others that have like come up more recently. And it's like when you look back, those princesses were ones that were more so the ones seeing like running away from home, going against their evil stepmother. But now as we're like going out of that transition, we're seeing a lot of them don't end off with like a happily ever after, I'm married, but a lot of them end off with I'm doing what I want to do. Like Elsa's actually getting the chance to have her own kingdom and really rule that. Or Moana's just getting to do what she always wanted to do, which was kind of like let herself connect with the ocean and connect with like her ancestry in the ways that she wanted to do. So I think that's really powerful, even through all of these examples of like these childhood movies and all these nostalgic shows that everyone's seeing, that the message of feminism is really encapsulating whatever's happening at the current time. And I think that's something that's really important, that like the media also continues to change with the needs of the people.
Yeah, and I think that like even though a lot of people may wonder like why we have so many like portrayals of feminism, I think it's like important to remember that like it's like a hard process to change so many people's mentalities at once. Like it's only by like reinforcing the message of like femininity that it like becomes more like of a popularized concept. Because like at the like with the Oscars, for example, and like the Barbie movie, like they didn't nominate any of like the lead female actresses. They only nominated Ryan Gosling, and even he was like, "Why am I nominated and they're not?" And I think that's like important to remember that like it's like an uphill battle, sort of, where like you can win it if you like really try, but like you have to really reinforce the message of like femininity comes in like all these shapes and forms, and like we've been improving as a society, but we need to like keep improving. Like it's not like a one and done thing of like the message will get there. No, you need to like keep pounding it in for it to get there eventually.
Yay. That was awesome. Um, I like how we kind of focused on change in society and how that takes time. And honestly, like you were talking about, Savi, like we need to improve. And honestly, like over time, like things like how society changes, everything changes. I think with that definitely will come improvement. Like there may be times of setback, like how we had the Oscars, like that stuff, but like overall, everything's improving. And I think that's what's good about society.
I agree. Thank you everyone for listening and hearing our thoughts on feminism in like society and like in pop culture and all of that. And please listen to the next one.
Yay, thank you guys. Bye.